Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at what could be considered a beginner's camera but also a budget camera, and that camera is the Chinon CM-4. So let's have a look at it in a bit more detail. The Chinon CM-4 was introduced to the market in 1980 and it was sold throughout the UK as a budget camera by Dixon's, and there were thousands upon thousands of these sold, as you'd expect. It's a fully manual camera with a battery powered 3 LED exposure meter, which we'll go into a bit more detail on a bit later on, because it's quite an unusual one in many respects. I would say that this would be an ideal camera for someone who wants to learn about the basics of photography, where you can set your shutter speed and your aperture, and you've got a very basic exposure meter which I'll go into a bit more detail on later in the video. And also, one of the advantages of this camera is that it's very, very cheap. I paid £6 for this particular camera and it's in pretty much perfect condition. The only thing that really needs to be done on this particular camera is the felt pad just above the mirror, and that's it. Apart from that, it's perfect. So let's have a look at some of the basic specifications first. It's got a metal Seiko vertical focal plane manual shutter. The shutter speeds range from a second up to 1,000th of a second plus bulb. The ISO range goes from 25 to 1600. So to change the ISO, you lift up on this dial and turn until you get your preferred ISO setting. It has a Pentax K mount, and so you've got access to an absolute huge variety of different lenses. The lens that this was sold with is apparently a very capable lens, and it's the Auto Chinon 50mm f1.9. The exposure meter is powered by two 1.5 volt LR44 or SR44 batteries. So let's have a quick look around the camera. Here you have a lift up knob here, which you can use to rewind your film. It's got a hot shoe. This is where you adjust your ISO setting by lifting and twisting. So once you've got your ISO selected, you've got no chance of changing it during your taking of pictures. Then you've got your speed change dial, and of course your film wind on. You change your lens by pressing that button at the side there and twisting. And to remount it, you line up the red dots, turn until it clicks. And here you've got a couple of lugs onto which you can attach either a wrist strap or a neck strap. I'll come back to this light here at the front in a short while, because that's a bit of an anomaly really. And at the back we have a little space here where you can slot in a tab of a film box so that you can remember what film you've got in there. I'll come on to the viewfinder in a moment and the three lights. So to release the back, you click up and then it opens. You've got the pressure pad here that keeps your film nice and tight, and there you can see the vertical Of course, as is usual, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, you put your film in there, pull the strap across, slide it into one of those slots, making sure the film's tight, and then just wind on a couple of times. Then close the top, and away you go. And the exposure meter is actually here on the outside of the viewfinder, which I've never come across before. It's usually within the viewfinder, but I suppose with costs being a priority and keeping the costs down, it was mounted on the outside here. So to activate the light meter, you press down and there you can see a red light, and that's suggesting that this particular image would be underexposed. The top light is for overexposure, both of which are red, and the middle light is green, which indicates you've got the correct exposure. I'll cut in a video here to show you that in operation. And this may sound a little bit odd, but it actually works quite well. I mean, you can compose your image, half press the shutter button, and then to the left you see a blurry image of a red light or a green light, and you adjust your shutter speed or your aperture, and you can actually do this while you got the camera up to your eye, and then select shutter speed or aperture until you get the green light, and then you can go. So as I say, it sounds counterintuitive, but I find it works quite well. Coming back to the front of the camera, we have this red light. Why the hell they've put it there, I do not know. So as you can see here, what happens is we've selected our shutter, and when you take your image, for some reason it shows a flash of red light. Now if we put it onto 1 second, now why would you need that? I mean, I wouldn't want people to know, okay, it's a fairly noisy camera, but not overly. It's not like something like a Praktica or one of the Fed cameras or of that ilk. But yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can say is that on the more advanced Chinon cameras, there is a self-timer here with a red light to show that the self-timer is going to click. But I would have thought on this camera, to keep costs down, I would have gotten rid of that. So who knows? So I say this is as basic a camera as it comes. It's got no self-timer, no aperture priority, no shutter priority, no exposure compensation, and no depth of field preview. I like it. I do like this camera, and I'll be using it in the very near future, and I'll be showing you some of the images.